everything that way. Thank you, Dee. Thanks for coming to Lightning Talks. I have something to admit. The way I organize this has been a little bit selfish. And that selfishness is, I hope after all these talks today, everyone will be convinced to buy land with their friends. Because it's actually a bit of a historical anomaly that land is as accessible as it is. If you think of the Athenian and even the Roman Empire, sure, maybe 40% of citizens own land, but only 5% of people were citizens. Even throughout Europe and in the medieval ages, most of us would be serfs right now on some person's land. And so to have that privilege is really cool, but the times are changing. And that window might not be as generous as it is now. And so I hope by the end of this talk, you'll feel a little bit inspired. It's also cool because we got so many fun people who are going to take you through all these different things going on with land and localism. So first, let's start with localism and learn what it means to be local and why the future is local. Please welcome up Monty. If we'd have a beautiful piano intro, that would be wonderful.
You're gonna have to hold this keyboard like a guitar.
The guitar.
Not quite as good as my clicker that was out of charge. Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk about my latest venture that's just launching this month. We've just made this pitch deck, and so I'm going to share that with you today. I've been working in this regenerative finance space for over 5 years now. And so this feels like the culmination of all of that work, feeding into localism labs and how we can catalyze regenerative place-based economies and how we can create this laboratory to empower that new infrastructure and serve communities across the globe exploring this. 5 minutes, yeah, so I'm gonna whiz through a lot of this. I'm gonna skip some slides. I think we know the dire state that the globe is in right now, and how all our systems are failing, and we're seeing those cracks ever deepening with all of the stuff going on right now geopolitically. But I think all of us in this room are pretty aware of that, so I'm gonna skip over this. Yeah, so this is kind of introducing some of the localism framing as well as the kind of global systemic problem is at the root of a lot of the global systemic issues. I see finance as a kind of root cause, first principles level system that is driving a lot of this. And the kind of right-wing libertarian economists will tell you about the amazing efficiencies of the market whilst kind of ignoring its unintentional foot back here. And at the same time, we have this hyper-globalized system that we've constructed in the neoliberal world order over the past 20, 30, 40 years. And yet that's fundamentally disconnected from how life and communities and society that are very rooted in place. So we're actually deviating a lot from living systems design principles. And we're often told this myth of we can't design a new system, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is the end of capitalism. But actually that's, I think, a myth, and we can create new systems because we created them, so we can create new ones. And so I love this kind of diagram as well of thinking about the fundamental tensions that currently exist in finance versus nature, and living system principles, which are complex and relational, regenerative, embodied and rooted and long term, are very much in tension with how the modern globalized financial system works. And we have a lot of amazing academics who have worked out we can design new regenerative economic systems. And so localism finance is really taking a lot of this amazing academic work that's going on in regenerative finance thinking and practice, and then marrying that with place. And a lot of interesting stuff is happening at the community scale. And so kind of pulling on these kind of different fundamental pillars of rights of nature, local governance model, new community-owned infrastructures, and new forms of finance, we can bring that together to really serve place-based economies. So yeah, we're launching this Localism Labs to be the bridge between a lot of these sources of catalytic capital that exist out there, from philanthropy, but actually to other forms of municipal, all sorts of funding sources, and these transformative place-based projects. I'm going to skip this because there's lots of text and get to this nice, sexy graphic, which I made the other day, and kind of visualizing what does this like place-based new age economy, localism grounded with regenerative principles look like at the different layers, from what's happening on the ground. And here at Fool's Valley, we're kind of an example of one node in what could be part of a larger place-based bioregional scale or even national scale for the whole of Portugal economy, what's happening on the ground. And then we have the kind of systems up here which are coordinate, the financial mechanisms, the economic systems, and there's new forms of that we can design, up to the kind of digital data commons, and then how we're bringing finance to support the flourishing of that system. There's a whole integrated stack that we want to bring together. So we've come up with the various concepts of how we're going to do that. And yeah, we're just about to launch phase 1 of that, where we're identifying and researching these different place-based economies across the globe, evaluating them in various ways and strengthening them so that they're ready to deploy into. And our sort of big aim with this, we have some very good connections to some of the largest foundations in the world, and are aiming to raise a $20 million fund in 2027 to then channel into these place-based bioregional regenerative economies. And so hopefully, if we pull that off, it'll be pretty exciting. But that's what we're going to try and do. And yeah, these are some of the different kind of place-based bioregional economies that we're already working with and evaluating across the globe. And we've got several more that we're adding into that. And yeah, trying to redesign capital structures in a way that actually serves people in place as opposed to extracting from it is very important. And super excited to be on a pretty kick-ass team. Like these people have been working in the conventional nature finance space for decades and are some very well connected to a lot of very high-powered people, but have really leaned deep into this regenerative movement. And I'm kind of bringing the more Web3 tech side to the team. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see what we might be able to do together. It's literally just getting started. So yeah, that's my presentation about a blueprint for economies that serve life within the planetary boundaries.
Any questions? No. Any questions?
What's going to help you the most, Monty?
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry. What's going to help you the most, Monty?
If you have cool localism themed technologies or projects, place-based projects that are part of wider constellations of place-based organizing, so like Fool's Valley is one example, but if it's part of a larger structure of coordination that are, Fool's Valley connecting with many other projects, those are the kind of place-based institutional system structures that we're looking for. So not at like the individual land project level, but at a slightly larger scale. Or on the converse side, if you're like building cool technology that you think could serve these new types of place-based economies and institutions, then also I'm interested.
Okay.
There's a question.
Oh, question?
Great presentation. And what I was particularly interested in was the slide where you have the bridge between the places and the capital. If you recall, I was running a community incubator for about 5 years, and that is very similar. So I wanted to know, what is the business model and how does that make the operation sustainable?
Yeah, so fundamentally one of the models that we're leaning into is you keep ownership and largely governance in place and in the community. And when you accept external capital, you know what are the terms which you're accepting that on, and not like giving up all of that rights and control. And so one of the models is the community retains the ownership, and then if there's surplus, the surplus can then be returned to investors. So there's like a clear kind of like model for how you're not extracting from place, but also being able to accept catalytic capital that also wants a return. So it's a difficult tension sometimes. But you don't want to just rely only on philanthropy and charitable based giving, because that's also not going to unlock the scale that we need.
Yes. What is the greatest danger for this project?
I think the greatest danger, as with any of these things, is often getting co-opted and starting out with good intentions, and then things don't end up in the ways that you always envision. But I think that we're coming into it with some good principles and intentions, so I'm confident that we can do things differently. That's just off the top of my head.
I had one question. What is in it for these investors and philanthropists?
Well, it depends so for philanthropists, it's usually they're doing it in a mission-orientated way, so they want to see impact and outcomes. And so if we have good systems for measuring those impacts and outcomes and showing that the change is happening. Obviously for investors, they're looking for returns, and so if you can guarantee, have appropriate risk-reward kind of scale, then that's good. But we're not looking for VCs because that's extractive by nature. So, yeah.
And can you give one example of a project that this would fund?
Yeah,
would be unusual.
One I'm super excited about is one of my co-founders of my previous venture is based in Curacao, and he has intimate connections with the government and the central bank of Curacao. And so we have a potential to actually redesign the islands, a national sovereign island's entire economy, to use completely new financial rails to design it in regenerative ways and have an entire economic system that's baked in with regenerative principles at the scale of an entire nation. So that would be pretty cool as like a prototype to say, we've actually done this at the scale of an entire nation, and then see how we can replicate those models in other places.
That is pretty badass. Well, thank you, Monty. Now we know your real last name on here too. Speaking of localization, we are now going to head over to Africa and look at how women can have more land ownership.
Thank you. Here's the keyboard guitar.
Okay, I thought that was my hair. I was like, I have braids. Hi.
Well, 1 second. You'll have to say hi a second.
I thought your name was a rabbit tail. Okay. Tell me when to say hi.
You're good.
All right. Hi. Before I start my presentation, I actually want to go back to the local presentation. I'm from Sudan originally, and when the war broke out, many people had to leave, and we still have the largest displacement crisis in the world. For my family, because we own land and we live far away from the cities, my mother's family that lives in the city moved up to where my father's family is, and that's where we own the land. So there are these conversations that I don't think people understand the impact of owning land. It's beyond wealth generation, it's just protecting your family. So, let me talk about my nonprofit. Landbridge International. I started this with 2 amazing women to help women secure their land. Now, do I just...
Yeah, you hit the space bar.
Oh, okay, great. We're gonna pretend like this is a land title.
Yeah.
Just kidding. All right. So, I use Nano Banana to help me make this visual. So as you can see, there is a woman who's very excited about owning her land. And the reason is because women reinvest in their family. They actually do all kinds of things that creates income generation for generations to come. On the flip side, when women don't own their land, they are 8 times more likely to suffer from domestic violence. Children are far more likely to be susceptible to diseases. I could go on and on and on about this. I think in many studies, it's just been proven time and time again, when women have access to financial resources, particularly land, the investment in the family is exponential. They've even actually proven more recently that women are better stewards of the land. This is no disrespect to the men at all in this room. It benefits you when the woman in your household owns the land as well. Now, there's hundreds of millions of women who don't own land, and I am not trying to create the solution for all of them. I'm actually very focused on a niche problem of women who go through the entire process of proving their land ownership, but then they get to the final step and they cannot pay the fee. Now, this fee for the title is on average about $100. The reason we landed on this, my co-founders and I, as a problem that we wanted to tackle is because these are women who go through the process, they have agency, there's not a behavior change here that we're investing in. We are going in and just paying for the title fee. But we don't go out and find these women. As much as I consider and talk to you guys about Sudan and Africa, I don't know women in Iringa, Tanzania. I find partners in countries where the rule of law for land titling exists already. And these are partners who are already working with these women, and they got them to the point of proving that they own the land, but then they can't pay the fee. We co-create with these partners criteria around what vulnerability looks like, because it's different in every country. For example, in Zambia, you have a very high percentage of women who suffer from chronic illness, like HIV. In Tanzania, we focus a lot on women-headed households who, if they are actually in possession of the title or the CCRO, customary land document, they then can plant produce on the land. There's different issues in each country. Right now we are in Uganda, Zambia, and Tanzania. Oftentimes people think that we just focus on Africa. We actually will work anywhere the rule of law favors issuing titles. So if I had a partner in Mexico or Lithuania or wherever the rule of law exists, and there are organizations on the ground that want to work with us to identify vulnerable women, very happy to work there. So I'm like, not just Africa, let's go, okay. Oh yeah, another nano banana. This is another reason I'm very excited to be in this cohort residency is the more I can communicate with AI to help me create visuals that explain what we do. I included in here because I was very proud that I went back and forth on creating this. I don't know if you guys, I actually use this as my background on every Zoom call because it's very easy for me to then point. But it was the best way for me to explain why we are this bridge. The ideal scenario, I would also like to add, is that we replicate to a point where we go out of business. I would like every country to be able to do the same thing that Landbridge is doing, and so we create these playbooks in each of them. But again, it's a 3-step process. We find the local partners. The local partners already identified the women. They identify the women. We then provide them the funding as grants. They then provide us the actual receipts of the land title documents. That way we have actual verification that they've done what they're going to do. There's a lot of trust involved in this, but each of the organizations we work with are all verified also, by the way. Okay, now back to us. We've actually helped so far 740 women. We started in 2023. I'm gonna shout out Owen here because he was on the birthday trip to Tanzania with me where this idea came to fruition, and it was my 40th that I said, hey guys, I would actually love if you guys could just help me help 40 women get their land titles. And then this, from then on, became the thing that we do. And in fact, in Tanzania specifically, out of the 740 that we've helped, we just issued a grant last week to help 1,000 women in addition in Tanzania. So of the 1,740 that we've helped, 1,700 of them are in Tanzania. So this presentation really is about the success of Tanzania. I will even add that in Zambia, Uganda is also another great place that we're working, but Zambia I want to highlight because it's not even a specific partner that we're working with there. We found 2 women who are so committed to helping vulnerable women secure their land. We hired them as independent contractors. They speak the local languages. The amount of pride that they take in Landbridge actually motivates me to do a better job in the work that we do. I find as a personal vehicle, it's my responsibility to be this bridge, to find the funding, to get to them because they're actually doing the hard work. My job is to just go find people who care about this. Okay, I'm like, I could just. So these are just a couple of pictures I wanted to throw in. These are some of the women in Zambia that we have helped in Uganda and in Tanzania. This woman has one of the best interviews, but I didn't have time to translate it because she talks about how important this is for her to then, she runs to go tell her son that she has the title. There's like a whole emotional experience of watching what it means to her because she'd been waiting for so long to do this. These are my co-founders. Just walking down. these women are actually the ones who have more experience in women's land rights. I have the experience of being the person from a country where land matters so much. So I'm using that as my main credibility in all of this. I actually got introduced to land issues. I've always cared about poverty fighting. I started working for a blockchain meets land rights company in 2020? I'm like, what year is that? And in working at that company, I was like, forget the blockchain thing, sorry, no offense. We just need to go help people address their actual issues. The tech can come later, and it needs to, but not yet. Okay, I am not an executive director if I don't make that final slide of a pitch. 1 minute. Okay, well this is the last slide. Help us, it's $100. We have a 501c3. 1 minute left. I'm gonna not sing, dance. Oh yeah, this was a video of a woman just saying thank you, but I will just reenact it for you guys. Thank you.
Any questions? We have time for 2 or 3 questions.
Do you follow up on the women who
Yes.
have received?
Yes, actually, thanks for that question. It's kind of a long tail in terms of like long-term impact or like actual impact. It's not like water or food. I can't like tell you that right away. But from an emotional perspective, we went back and met. Well, we asked the partners to go back and interview some of the women in Zambia and in Tanzania. In Tanzania, because it was our earliest investment or grant. Some of the women were like, I now have been able to sell the produce on my land because I can prove the ownership, and this means that now this can be my successful business. There was one woman who was like, I now have registered the, I don't know if this is completely true, but it makes, the fact that she's excited about it, she said, I'm now looking into registering the carbon credits from the trees that I've planted. I was like, really? That sounds, okay, that's really true, great, amazing. The inheritance stuff has been the most impactful experience because a lot of these women have expressed that this was causing so much strife in their families, and the fact that they've been able to have the property. The women who inherited the property now finally being able to settle this, settled a lot of the issues with their own children. So that, just from an emotional perspective, feels very valuable, but I know in the long term that it's going to be something that is economically valuable to them.
Yeah. One more question.
Did I get more time? Because that zap thing in the eye. I'm scared.
I think I have a question around this land ownership. Like, do you have any plans or any idea of how to lock it so that it would remain somehow, I don't know, non-speculative or not possible to sell it again back into the market? Or is it like, or for now, out of scope for any reason?
So we're only working in countries where the rule of law has already created measures to be protective. So Zambia, Uganda, a lot of these have land reform policies that came out, and it's like SDGs that they're trying to meet. So my ideal scenario is that everywhere that we work, this is protected. I would love, for example, to work in Sudan, but I can't protect this, right? So it would be a waste of effort if we went in somewhere where I know in 2 days there just wouldn't be enough protections to make sure that these things aren't resold right away. So right now we're only focusing on places that already have those protective measures in place, and the organizations that we're working with know how to, sorry, am I done? Okay.
No.
I'm like, "Ugh." We can only work places that there are the rule of law. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Yes, it brings a lot of curiosity, and I would love to
Yes.
talk about it.
Happy to, yes.
Thank you.
And a final one from Fulton.
Oh, I was like,
That's
Sorry,
good
it's
presentation, Rania.
oh, thank you.
Real quick one, it's land-bridge.org.
Yes,
That's where you're gonna donate.
yes.
And is there any other way that, okay, donated,
Oh, thank you.
is there any other way that we can support you?
Spread the message. If you are at a company that has matching grants, I can talk to you about becoming like an ambassador of ours. We can do a campaign around whatever your company's needs are, so that then we can, I don't know, get more donations. We also accept Bitcoin, stocks. There's a number of different ways that we accept donations. I learned this more recently because one of our donors expressed that interest, and I was like, I will figure out how we can do this to get you a 501c3 letter. So now we have that. I don't know. I'll come back to you with a better answer. Help us. Thank you.
The talk's gonna be pretty optimistic, but we gotta add a bit of suspense. So please welcome Chris, who's gonna talk about the perils of land ownership. And maybe we turn on a light.
No, that's right.
It looks more ominous this way.
I like to talk from the shadows. So I guess I'm really talking to those, I'm not really talking about large scale here. Anything that's on the scale where truly you're investing in something and you're some kind of investor, go for it. I'm really talking to those who are thinking on that smaller scale of, oh, let me buy some land with my friends. I'd love to own some land with my friends. And it's a talk really about ownership and what ownership means. There was a legal scholar called Wray who I think had 8 different aspects of ownership. So ownership means that you have the right exclusively to have the land if it's land that's being owned, to use the land. You can exclude other people from it. You can give it away if you want to. You can destroy it to some extent. You can take the fruits of it. And so you have all these different aspects of ownership. And truly, as soon as you are no longer owning something as a sole individual, it becomes quite difficult to exercise many of these rights, many of these aspects of ownership. And I speak really from that part of my career where I was a lawyer in company and shareholder disputes. Because for most of the projects that you would attempt where you're buying land with your friends, you will probably own the land through a company or through some kind of legal entity. And so in fact, you won't own the land. You will own shares in a company or some other right that is not land ownership. You will not be the owner of the land. That means by default, you will have no right to be on the land. You will not be allowed to live there unless the company allows you to live there. So it all comes down to how does that legal entity make decisions? Who is involved in the decision making? And it brings up all the standard issues that you find in shareholder disputes. So is decision making going to be majoritarian in some way, so sort of fundamentally democratic in some way, in that some majority or plurality of the participants desiring to do a thing means that thing will happen, but usually subject to some sort of minority protections. So there'll be something giving you some kind of veto over some set of things that might happen. And I think until you've sat down with your friends and done a scenario planning exercise where you think of the difficult things that might occur, what if one of you should be incapacitated and it would be your next of kin who is now exercising rights instead of you? And how would other people feel about someone other than you exercising those rights, whatever they are? Would you wish to be, would they wish in that situation for those next of kin to be compelled to give up that right in some way or sell it on? What is the scope for selling on your right? Will you have an inalienable right to live on the land? And if so, that probably means that everyone does. So have you found a set of people where you're absolutely convinced that forever you will not be able to exclude one of those people from your project? Whatever they should do, however they should turn out, whatever happens to them, they have a nasty blow to the head and they're just not a nice person anymore. Can you do anything about it? So it's all the unpleasant issues that one faces as a lawyer in disputes are the ones I think you should worry about the most, because all the rest is fun and it's just, you know, is sort of, it's the joy of figuring out communal decision making. But truly, I would invest at least half of your efforts in thinking about the dark side. All of the unpleasant scenarios. So I'm happy, I love regaling people with stories of all the horrific shareholder disputes I was involved with. That's it really. Come talk to me about it.
Any questions for Chris, who I should also mention founded Fools Valley in some way? Would you like to tell us just a little bit about that story and open it up for Q&A?
Oh, I mean, I can't possibly squeeze. We should do a Fools Valley talk another time.
Okay.
That's an awesome idea.
Done.
Yeah.
But any questions?
Is it? I think there's like no template for how we mitigate the dark side risks, right? Or like does
Well,
court know
it's
this
all
stuff?
trade-offs. So there is no perfect solution, because truly there are different things that you will care about, and they do trade off one against the other. So on the one hand, as one participant, maybe it's really valuable to me to have effectively a veto over as much as possible, because I'll be really unhappy if something that I fundamentally disagree with it goes against my principles. If that should happen, despite the fact that I voted against it, I might feel terrible, especially if I've invested my life savings in this thing. And I probably have no exit. Maybe there's no liquidity. On the other hand, if I have those rights, probably everyone else does. So any one person can then hold up any decision, however important, however in line with the principles. And as soon as you move away from, well, decisions fundamentally are made by some aggregation of the will of the participants involved, you can try to have, we have some sort of constitutional thing, we have some sort of principle. It doesn't matter what the participants think, they're compelled to follow this principle. And now we're into the necessary realm of dispute resolution. So what will happen when somebody says that this principle is being followed and someone else says that the principle is not being followed? Who will say whether the principle is being followed or not? And you probably don't want the local courts in the jurisdiction in which you own your land to be resolving that dispute for you. You wouldn't, I assure you, you would not want to go to a Portuguese small claims court. I've tried that. The quality of judgments here is not great. Had some pretty absurd results. So what are you going to do? You can't just rely on default local courts. And you have things like arbitration. You can design your own dispute resolution process, as efficient and as fair as you like. But you'll have to put the effort into working out what that means, and there's various mechanics to it.
Another question.
Are there any potential innovations that you can imagine that could help make this process easier in the future?
Well, one I just mentioned, which is, however cleverly you design it, you won't avoid disputes. At some point there'll be some sort of dispute. And so there's all sorts of great processes you can follow when it comes to dispute resolution. Starting with the non-legal, really. So all of your best facilitative, deliberative dialogue processes to try to hold space for emotions to be expressed. I mean, just the number of disputes where a sensible decision wasn't arrived at because someone felt really hurt. And even with a mediation process, a commercial mediation process, I couldn't really hold space for that person to express how they really felt and for it to be received by the others. Like, it just wasn't within the mandate as a commercial mediator to be that kind of facilitative. So there's all sorts of things you can do there. And then if it's looking more legal, you can pursue various mediation approaches, and there's good ways to design that. And if it gets legal, arbitration is the magic ingredient here. You can design your own dispute resolution process, and what comes out at the end will be recognized and implemented by a local court anywhere in the world. Basically anywhere in the world. New York Convention is more or less every single country. At least every country where I'd be willing to risk owning land. That's the rule of law, right? This is your magic weapon. On the other hand, rolling your own arbitration clause is like rolling your own cryptography. If you fuck it up, you are fucked. So there's great potential there, but it must be done.
Don't just vibe it through junctions.
I strongly recommend that 5 drafted arbitration clauses.
Yet.
One day.
Well, thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for your patience in the intermission. I'm going to be talking about monasteries and how they apply to our current context. Monasteries is a topic that I understand deeply because I studied it for 2 whole weeks. Okay, so this is coming from Michel Bauer. There are 3, I told you yesterday, there are 3 pillars of civilization: the commons, the market, and the state. And it's basically a framework for looking at civilization. So I'm gonna quickly take you through a history of why this is. So let's start with the commons. So this text is actually taken from one of Michel Bauer's blogs, but specifically where he's summarizing Kojin Karatani's paper. The commons are primary societal logic in tribal kinship-based societies, especially in the nomadic phase. So this is where civilization started. Slide, please. And the gift economy kicks in when humanity settles and can no longer escape conflict through movement, Chris. Social relationships are created through mutual giving. Once conquest and domination set in, authority ranking, i.e. the state, becomes dominant. And here we come to the second pillar of civilization. And 3, and I promise this is the last slide with text, once commercial cities expand, the market becomes ever more dominant. With the capitalist order enshrining its hegemony, starting in Western Europe but becoming a global norm. And there's actually question about whether that applies to the Asian growth of civilizations, but we can simplify. Okay, so let's move on. So this is just a backdrop. So what the hell is a common? A commons is shared ownership. And you see this through many different types through history. You have pastoral commons, that's like from Swiss agriculture, fishery commons, famously from Turkey for centuries, irrigation commons, urban commons, I mean, who's been to a communal garden, and the digital commons. And yes, I believe that Ethereum is a form of commons, and it's a form of commons that should be protected. Okay, why monasteries? There's Thomas Cahill. He wrote this book called How the Irish Saved Civilization. And it's for a comedic effect to some degree, but basically the monastic culture of Christian monasteries developed through Europe, starting from Italy, and eventually it formed a network of monasteries that went all the way to Ireland. Ireland being such a remote place and there being a sea, an ocean in the middle, it was particularly defensible. And so one of the things that monasteries did was preserve knowledge. And so it's attributed that many of the Latin and Greek texts that we have today is thanks to the monastic history, the Christian monastic history. Here we have the famous Orite Labora, like sort of the faith, the first Christian monastery. Here we have an Irish monastery, and I want to pay homage to the Buddhist monastic tradition that was equally important. Arguably, it was a similar thing where it arose from a period of where market and state were weak. This is the common theme. When market and state were weak in history, the commons starts growing out of necessity. Introducing micro-exits. I copied this from an earlier slide that we did with Nico at the Logos Parallel Society. And where we were talking about Solarpunk OS, trying to find a framing for like how do we look at all of these like little experiments that we see all over the place. We have pop-up cities, regenerative villages, urban third spaces, hacker collectives, and so on. All of these different experiments are trying to see like a prototype, how do we live in a different way? How do we reconnect to the planet? And how do we fix the meta crisis? Yeah, let's rename that. These are 21st century monasteries. That might sound weird. You might ask, wait, what? But why? Okay, so first, property, they emerged out of necessity, right? So they occupied the vacuum of the collapsed Roman Empire, right? Anyone wondered why you have all these castles in medieval ages? It was because there was no more rule of law. Today, I can fall asleep in a public park in a major city, surrounded by millions of people with my phone next to me. I won't get stabbed, my phone won't get robbed probably. But like, you know, that's a miracle. Like we give that stuff for granted, that you can live surrounded by millions of people. That is technology. That is not the natural state of things. In periods where the market and the state get weaker, where the rule of law and international law stops being prevalent, then the commons starts being needed more and more. So they're a countercurrent to the status quo. Monasticism began as a withdrawal for society, so we see these things being branded as micro-exits. In order to experiment, you need to withdraw yourself from the current state of things. Yes. Second, morally guided goals. They were, I mean, this is a correlation. I don't know if it's a causal relationship, but the history of monasteries is religious history. So the fact that they had this deep religious drive meant morality, meant being able to plan beyond your own lifespan. So preserve, sustain long-term visions. They were defensible, and actually here I want to open a parenthesis. Our digital commons are not yet defended, and I feel like Ethereum is not defended, for instance, because it's not it's being looted left and right. All of the work that's being done, it's being replicated in other blockchain for private corporate interest. There's a reason that the monasteries are often found on mountaintops or on islands or in remote places or with indeed walls, because they need to be defensible, because they are providing a sort of an oasis in a state of lawlessness, let's say. And safe stewardship of knowledge. A lot of people know that what I was mentioning earlier. Like, this is what monasteries did. They copied and preserved manuscripts from antiquity. This is my final slide. I want to thank Andre from Sanctuary, and look up that project because it's amazing what he's trying to do. For introducing me to monasteries. He asked me to give a talk about this at ECC. and last week, and this is what we're doing. It's a framing for what we're trying to do, and it's not gonna be about praying in a cave, but it might be about building local LLMs with solar power and Starlinks in a communally owned land project. So thank you very much.
Woohoo. Any questions? Anyone ask any questions? Chris?
I wonder, of the modern monasteries that you put up there, how many of them do you think have the minimum necessary moral framework to deserve the title monastery? I give an illustration. I had a legal client whose life was threatened and eventually they were banished from Prospero. Because if you piss off the mayor there, they just tell you to fuck off. So there's no rule of law, there's no moral framework. Does it deserve to be called a monastery?
I could add to that question. It's not incidental that monasteries are religious institutions, and part of that is a depth of practice, which I think if you speak to monastics, they would say is integral to the capacity to live together and preserve their traditions and the knowledge that they're carrying the way that they do. So I would ask, along with Chris, along with the moral quality, what is the depth of practice that gives the process of inner transformation or attenuation of our tendencies towards egotism that would actually allow doing something that in my view deserves the title of monastery.
So I would like to say, first of all, that my main claim here isn't the examples given in that slide fit 100% the title. My claim is this is a good thing to aim for. Second, I think that I agree. I've seen many failure modes. I've seen many disputes not being resolved in the best of ways. I've been traveling to a lot of these places in the last couple of years, so we're not there. But the invitation is to frame things this way. Also, in the previous slide, at some point in one slide, I said, I don't know if it's causal or correlation, but they're always religious. And there's always a deep practice. Actually, in the history of Italian and European monasteries, there was always the initial sort of mandate that was very humble. It was like, let's go to the cave and pray and like only wear sandals even when it's cold. And then over centuries, the fact that they had all these properties that they were like keeping up the technology in place, like agricultural technology, whatever, made them economically relevant and powerful until there was a breakdown and someone else came up with a new mandate, a return to being humble. So, yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, I think that the micro exits that I gave, like these pop-up cities and these spaces and this stuff, is kind of, they have some bits and pieces that we can use. The other thing that I wanted to really draw people's attention to is the fact that monasteries were networks. They weren't just like, oh, it's some monastery isolated. They were like doing pilgrimages, like expanding and trying to like safeguard their way of doing things.
You also have really interesting network level governance processes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, Deca. Now, what if monasteries had vision, prose, and Bitcoin? We're now going to invite Jeremy up to talk about Solarpunk. Monasteries, aka Agartha.
This might be a repeat for some of you that know me, but I'm gonna just keep repeating it until it becomes reality. This is a vision for our Solarpunk campus for Agartha. Part of this came to me in a dream and in meditations and in plant medicine ceremonies, and it just never left my brain, so that's all I can see. So please, next slide. Should I just use this? Okay. All right. So we all know the joy and the power of living in community and the ability to spark imagination and creativity, whether it's music jams or dance parties or food festivals or art exhibitions or sporting events or movie nights. But what if this was one of the answers to some of the biggest problems that we have in our world? We are facing an incredible crisis in loneliness, in obesity, in disease, in mental illness and infertility. We are destroying Mother Earth. Our programming is pumped with fear and anxiety. The systems of governments that we have are no longer serving us. Poverty is pervasive, and war continues and pervades. But that doesn't have to be our world. We have the power to change all of this, and we have the power to regenerate the earth in beautiful ways. And paradoxically, it actually starts with healing ourselves and our families and our communities, and letting that reverberate onwards and outwards throughout the entire planet. So a solution that I offer is a Solarpunk campus, a place where we blend nature, technology, community, and consciousness, where robot buddies help us harvest our food, and governance is handled on decentralized blockchain systems, and there's all of us hanging out naked together in And the Solarpunk campus is a place where we have joy and connection and love and abundance, where children and elders and everyone in between is held by trust, connected by community, and filled with abundance from Mother Earth. So this is my big ass Filipino family. I am just ingrained in co-living community because that's been my whole life. Here's Julie. And it is my dream to raise my kids in community and have them learn and grow, not just from an individual teacher, but from a community of teachers. And we can all learn from everybody, whether it's the oldest person in the room or just a little bit of a baby. So on a Solarpunk campus, nature is our closest ally, and so is technology. So we have robots helping us grow our own food. We're working in cooperation regeneratively with Mother Earth. Our technology is built on open source, decentralized, privacy-focused technology. So we think about this from an ethical framework of developing the right technology that actually integrates with nature. Energy is clean and free, so yes, we're going to have solar, wind, and geo, but this is also going to be a place where we research, develop, and deploy totally new forms of energy creation, including fusion and zero-point energy. We're all going to gather at this awesome community center that we're going to have. There's going to be a kick-ass library, an amazing, awesome kitchen, kind of like here at Booth Valley, Pillar Room movie theater, ceremony space, music stage. It's going to be super fun for us to all gather together. The Solarpunk campus is a place for education, where learning is lifelong. We'll study art, music, poetry, writing, engineering, construction, all sorts of wonderful things. And we're going to be full of wonderful, healthy activities, whether it's sports or camping or board games. We'll have health coaches and other folks that are paying attention to our nervous systems and how we live together. And we're going to balance busyness with stillness. So a place for quiet and solitude and meditation, to connect with ourselves, to connect with the plant medicines, to understand and explore consciousness, and to do it in a way that actually embraces freedom of discovery and expression versus fixed dogmatic rules. And we're going to do some awesome, amazing architecture. So we're going to be building on blessed land with permission of nature, following principles that have been passed down from indigenous wisdom, biophilic design, 3D printing, sacred geometry, really paying attention to the spaces that we create that feel actually natural and conducive to our well-being and to our nervous systems.
And it's going to be super fucking fun. We're going to have rope courses, trampolines, zip lines, amazing treehouse villages that we can create, swimming pools, etc. So it's all about play and having fun and enjoying yourself. And then members are also owners of the community. So we'll be participating in a tokenized economy that actually measures and rewards our intrinsic human values, which is love and compassion and creativity. And then our governance is going to be decentralized. We'll focus on democratic principles and leverage decentralized systems that earn and develop your reputation, and your governance rights are relative to the contributions that you make into the community, not just a matter of how much money that you have. So the Solarpunk campus is a place for healing, where we're connected to Earth, where we're surrounded by love and community, where we're free of toxins, where we're lifted by spirit. So I see a world full of Solarpunk communities, connected by ley lines and decentralized protocols. There are all these beautiful points of light radiating and regenerating the Earth, and I believe this is 100% possible. I think we are building this right now as we imagine this, and I am so thankful to be here with all of you because you are co-creating this as we speak. So thank you.
Any questions? Sandra.
Inspiring presentation. I think my question is, you said a sentence, and I want to have a specific question around this. You said the governance would be shared, and you said that the decision-making power wouldn't be only relying on how much money you bring, but also your contribution. So is it still a component that the decision-making power will be depending on the amount of money that you bring?
Yeah, I think so. I do think we are needing to create the containers to experiment with this, and I think these types of gatherings are ways we can put some of these systems into test. The way that I see it, economics are still incredibly important and a way of leveraging and demonstrating that you have created value and have value to contribute. The question is, how much do you have outsized power to control outcomes that no other people have access to? So what I would like to experiment with is to see if we can balance that better with, yes, there is some element of economic power that you have that can influence decision making, but there are other ways that you can generate value and build a reputation that gives you proportional governance rights and blend that together. So it might be more emerging as a ratio versus either you have governance power or you have economic power and that's it, and it's a binary. I see something a bit more fluid and merged together. And I think that blockchain gives us the ability to not only measure that very effectively, but also tokenize value very clearly and have reputation that's very trustworthy. I think the thing that's been missing with the blockchain world is connecting that into grounded reality. Because right now, if you, especially with AI, you can manufacture and synthesize a lot of that data, but you need something to verify that we're actually really human beings creating value together and have that data put on chain, knowing that it's a reputable source. So still very early stuff to explore with, but I would love to create these containers where we can actually play around with that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll go for it. I'd be a bit of a tricky one. So we had an example essentially there of a campus, and we know that campuses don't always exist in isolation. So can you talk a bit about how this works as a network infrastructure?
Yeah, I from the experience and research that I've done and just learning from a lot of the experts that are living and doing this, networks are actually a fundamental requirement. I don't think this is actually possible to do by yourself. And I think it's just very important that we're able to create a lot of cross-pollination, and not just cross-pollination, but are there actual standardized protocols where we can cooperate really effectively together, whether it's sharing knowledge or resources or talent or materials or food. These are absolutely totally necessary for us to really upgrade society. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we'll get to the practical aspects of it.
There's a lot of work to do there, for sure.
I love the biophilic design as well. That was just amazing. Very inspiring. I'm sure everyone could take away something from that, whether it was agriculture, the builders, people in community, people with kids. I mean, it almost seems to be a holistic solution for anyone who wants to be involved in sort of the future of living in these kind of places. So,
I know there's one more question. I'm going to take it to use it as cover for trying to get the slides on here for the next thing. So we might chat while you ask your question and answer, if that's okay.
Thanks. Super cool. Really in favor of this in principle, and I'm curious about a particular aspect. You mentioned it's similar to the previous question. You mentioned the weighting based on contribution, and when I was about 14 and living in a big family/community, my siblings and all, and I tried to come up with a way to get the dishes done and the room tidied, and it was an incredibly complicated system of merits and demerits, which we had to police among ourselves, and it collapsed fairly quickly. And I'm curious and also having been part of other like a co-working space and other places where there was an attempt to do this, to reward care work, but it's a very tricky domain, because as soon as you put quantified value on something, it changes the quality of the thing that you're measuring. So I'm curious how you're thinking about actually operationalizing the reputation and reward system.
It's a great point, and actually Owen and I had this discussion back in Puerto Rico, and I think there's a few things. One is, I don't know if there's ever going to be one universal protocol for how this works, because every community's value system is quite unique, and it's relative to the people that are in that community, the environment that they're in, the local and national governments that affect that. So I don't know if there's any one standard way to solve this. And then I also agree too that putting a number on everything may not be the answer too, and can actually corrupt the spirit behind the idea. And perhaps it's actually not even numbers that we express this reputation. And I come from the gaming world, and one of the things that I noticed that in these virtual worlds where we were creating literal economies in the World of Warcraft, like billions of dollars, and yes, there was exchange of gold and like mining gold and grinding gold, etc. But actually, the big value exchange was in reputation. Was, hey, here's like my avatar, and here's the levels, and here's the guild that I'm a part of. Here's my value system. Here's the amazing sweet armor and decorations. So perhaps there's ways that we can express reputation and trust in ways that, okay, wow, I see 10 amazing badges of you went to 17 Agartha residencies and you were vouched by 50 different people. It's not necessarily a number, but it gives some heuristic of, okay, I can actually trust you. I think there's something that you have done really well that 7 other people have vouched for. And those are the kind of decisions that we make emotionally and intuitively without a number. So there perhaps can be ways that we digitize that and bring that into concert with the monetary numbers too. So I think those are areas we'd like to play around with. But I'm totally open to ideas here, because I'm definitely not the economist. So yeah, I think part of this too is I'm recruiting team members of people that are really good at this shit, because I'm just good at talking. All right, but thank you everybody.
I'm talking about a lot of land ownership, and I'm excited to introduce Sandra, who I met at Twin Oaks, which is the oldest commune in the United States of America. And you'd think, like, you want to buy land with friends, like, you know, a lot of questions came up, like, how do you actually deal with the commons? How do you deal with all these things? And this is such a beautiful framework that blends the legal and financial stuff together. And I'm happy to help you get this on. It's a little funny. And when I go like this, it's the 5-minute warning. This is a bit of a keynote special, so it'll be a little bit longer, 15 to 20. But yes, please welcome Sandra. Warm applause.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was quite unplanned. Like yesterday, he told me Crystal me, would you like to come to this event? I was like, okay. But hearing all the presentations, it feels very aligned. But
You can click the down arrow.
and I took some notes about some of the things that you said, and I want to do like kind of a disclaimer first. I'm from the association Les Pasages. It's a non-profit association that started in France and that acts internationally now. And basically, we develop mechanisms to support communities, community builders, to build communities that have legal and financial sustainability based on creating commons, non-speculative commons. And so part of the disclaimer is, so we also believe in commons as a solution for our collective future. I think we saw many things around how our future starts to be a bit frightening sometimes, and how commons could be a solution for that. And we also believe that community is where we come from. I heard something like a bit different. I don't remember who said that it was not really part of our nature, but that we had a lot of conflict. I believe we actually come from community, and that we just lost that capacity due to systems that emphasized so much individualism. So this is just a pathway to go back to something that is quite natural, actually. And I also want to say something about buying land with friends. We like to have that joke in Les Pasages. It's like, if you want to build a community with friends, actually build a community with people and keep your friends. It's like, it's not actually the best way to keep your friends, to build a community with them. Or add more people that are not your friends so that you can actually build a structure, governance, because of course if you've known each other for so long, it's really hard to say, now let's define a way we're going to take decisions together, because we believe it's going to be easier, but it's not when we know each other so well. So yeah, I'm going to talk about legal and financial stuff, and I hope it's going to be fun. And yeah, we talked a lot about ownership, and I think I wanted to be more specific that here we're going to talk about collective ownership, which is different from individual ownership. I really believe in ownership, but I believe it being more sustainable when it's actually collective. And arbitration process, I love it, and I'm going to come to this also at some point. Okay, so when we talk about building community, living together, there are two main areas: people and money. So, and those two things are very challenging, obviously. In the mechanisms that we have developed within Les Pasages, we will talk about legal, and we like to see it as a marriage contract. Like, we want to have a legal that sustains all the agreements in case of disagreements, basically. So we are not really signing papers for when we love each other, when we are in a marriage. We don't look at every day at the contract. But if we start to feel like, I don't know if I want to be in this relationship anymore, then we're going to start to open the documents and look at it and start to say, okay, what happens if we actually want to split, or if we're in a major conflict, who gets what? This is when things get complicated, we look at the legal. Finances, obviously, how do I bring money in? How do I take my money out? It's of course a big topic for communities. The governance, we also talked about it. How do we decide where to go, what to do, how to allocate resources within the project? And the human aspect. I love this analogy, actually I forgot the name in English, that we come like little rocks that are a bit like stiff, like this, and by living together, experiencing things, we start to be more like, what's the name of these ones?
Riverstone.
Pebbles.
Riverstone?
Yeah,
Pebbles.
Pebbles, exactly. So this is like what life allows us to experience, to become beautiful pebbles. Okay, so the idea here is to balance or to find like a needs choreography. This is a little bit of inspiration of non-violent principles. Like, how can we step out of individualism, which is the society we live in currently, which mainly cares for individual needs only. We are mainly focusing on our own needs and our family. but also collectivism is not really what we aim for, because we want that a project also has their needs, and we want those needs to be addressed also. We don't want those needs to be more important than the individual needs. It has to be a balance. So how can we go to more cooperation and caring for the whole, balancing between individual and collective needs? So this is the I would say, foundation of everything that we do with those mechanisms that we invite the groups to play with. I always think that you're going to change the slide, but no, it's me. Okay, so there are 8 core values and plus 1 that I will explain afterwards that are at the core of what we do. And in the title it was written like, how do we align the dream with the matter? That's exactly the idea. Like, we can have beautiful vision of like, oh, we want to live that way, it's going to be amazing. But if we don't have actually practical ways to implement it in the structure, in the legal structure, in the way we deal with finances and everything, then it's just nice words basing on the capacity of the people to sustain those words. But at some point, if we end up in a very challenging situation, there is always this possibility of doing something different. So all those values are implemented in the documents, the legal documents, and the way we deal with finances. So one is human is more important than money. One person equal one voice, no matter what. We don't give more power to people that have more money. This is super important. No speculation. $1 equal $1. Because if we integrate speculation, at some point, individual needs might take over collective needs. So we can find strategies so that people don't lose money, but money doesn't make money. This is also a very important principle. Being able to get back your money, this is also a very important one. How can we have financial independence? This allows to do, les passages means a passage or also a step that is wise. It has several meanings. And the step is really important. We want to build communities that work with certain values, but we want them to be able to interact with the real world. It means we want to invite people to say, hey, you want to live in a community, you can bring your money in. And if you don't like it, you can go back. You can go back to the world and take your money. It's fine, no problem. It doesn't put the project at risk, and also you don't risk to lose your money. So we want people to take the step of trying, because we believe they're gonna like it actually. And how do we balance between individuals and the collective needs? That's the cooperation. I already explained, like how the sum of the I's create the we, and how the we supports all the different I's. No individual property, also something interesting compared to what was also shared here. We actually believe that we don't need to be the owners. We believe that you can have a right of use of a private space, that very clearly it's legal, you have a right of use. But if you leave, you don't sell your house to someone. Because otherwise I leave my house and I say, look, John is ready to buy my house, he's such a nice guy, you're gonna love him. But you know, maybe John is not at all part of the values of the project, and it's not the person that leaves can decide this, it's the people that stay that want to choose with whom they want to live. So basically property gives a power that we don't want to happen in the project. So it's collective property, you own part of the cooperative. New members are chosen collectively, that's just what I explained. It's a shared governance, we saw that it was very clear for most part of us. And the long-term sustainability of project is also something quite important, meaning that the whole financial system is made in a way that over the generations, and I cannot go into the details because this is so technical in a way, but what I want to say about this is that over the generations there is a system, a financial system, that makes the land more and more affordable to come to the point of in 100 to 150 years, depending on how people decide to deal with that mechanism. The future generation can join a project without initial contribution. So it means that slowly we are reversing the process of we are on Earth and we just come and we live and we eat and we enjoy life, to suddenly this is mine, if you want it you have to pay for it. And this has been a process that is a long-lasting process, and now we want to reverse that, actually making it more and more accessible without money. So in our project, half an hour from here, in 100 years, people can come with zero money. Only the utilities that need to be paid to live there. So that's the final goal. Can you change it? Okay, another very important principle at financial level is everyone provides what they can. Everyone gets what they need, as long as the project is collectively financed. So this is super important. We don't have financial minimum for people to join the project. We have a financial collective objective. And you can come with €1 million or dollars. If you are a single person or a couple, you will have a small apartment made for what you need. And you cannot claim for having more because you have more money. It's a needs-based assignment of the homes, basically. So this is super important because we try to de-entangle the capacity to access your needs based on the resources that you have. And this is really part of the key elements. So how do we implement that? This will be more for legal people. But basically, we have core documents for which the mechanisms are implemented in a certain way. And I want to say that we say mechanisms because it's not a model. It's basically different parameters. And we then invite every group to talk during the coaching that we give to define exactly how they want to I don't know how to say that in English, how to...
Twist the dials.
Sorry?
Twist the dials.
Yes, exactly. To make it depending on their culture. Do they want to have more shared incomes or less, or they can decide on certain things, and then the principles are all there. So the cooperative bylaws, and it works in most of all the countries that we've been working with, like starting with France. We implemented it also in Portugal with the cooperative code here, but also in Sweden, Brazil. We had a project also in the States, in Virginia, Spain. So there is a cooperative code in every country, more or less. So this is the ID card of the company. So it's based on the cooperative as the main organization that people will work to interact with the world. Then there are internal regulations. It's all about the operational processes. The integration process is part of this. I'm going quickly on this. Contribution agreements, the shareholder current account is also a very important part. We don't put the money in capital so much. We put only one share per person, so we know that even in front of a judge, no one can say, I have more pieces of the cake. I have more decision power. No, everyone has one share. And then the rest of the money goes into a share current account. It's a bit technical, but I hope it's clear enough. And then here we don't have a rental contract. We have actually a right of use contract that defines what are the terms to have access to a home. So all of this is what we prepare with the groups for their project. And the beauty of this is that we don't need this to live together. As I was saying, like on daily basis, we don't need that. But all of these are agreements in case of disagreement. And then this is where we land. Because if we don't have this, the rule that applies is the capitalistic world, who put more money, who has more decision power, or all those things. And here we twist things so that a judge would say, all your documents are saying you need arbitration. And then we know that we are backed up. So we don't fall into the shark. This is a bit technical, and because I already took a lot of time, this is the thing about I explained. So everybody has one piece of the cake, not more. And then the money flows in and out from the shareholder current account, which is much more flexible. We don't need to do so much legal constraints around changing the capital or not. And we play with this. And this also allows to have different kind of categories of associates. Some people that live on the land, and some people that could be impact contributors that bring money as shareholder current account with certain conditions to get their money back, and they don't need to be living in the project. So this is also a way to have more possibilities of being financed. In our project, for example, we have for about 500,000 euros of impact investors. So people that won't live in the project, but that brought some money because they didn't want it to stay in the bank. So this is all the process of how it works. They sign a contract, they have one share, the contributors, and we add the money to the SCA. And about risk management, how do we do it? We actually imitate the banks. What we do is like 85% of the money goes into the investment money for land, building, extension of the project, and 50% is kept as a reserve fund. And this is super important, so we can manage withdrawals, like bank do. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. You have to tell me how to take it.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay.
4 minutes.
And then there is a clear contract that defines what are the terms to get their money back. So as soon as they don't ask it, we don't give it back. But as soon as they ask it, we give 10,000. This is an example from our project. We give back 10,000 within a month, and the rest is defined in the contract. And we have a red button, which is if we don't give any sign of life during 2 years, we don't reimburse. They can go to the court and say, I ask the dissolution of all the company, selling the assets, and I get back my money. So because we have this red button, it increases the level of trust, and then people go, okay, if I want to do something different with my money, I can try this. And they make the step. That's the idea. This is complex, but this is how the accounting of the cooperative works with all the different shareholder current accounts here, with a system of possibility of balancing between people that come with more, other with less. Some people have more initial contributions, some people have zero, but then they have more monthly incomes they can actually add to their current account on monthly basis instead of from the beginning of the project. So yeah, this is just to explain. Usually I explain it during like 20 minutes. But that we can have initial contribution, additional monthly savings that go in the current account. But the whole model is sustainable just by the housing. And then activities, any economical activities are actually on top of the model that is sustainable just by people living there and having different ways of paying rents on monthly basis. Some people by working, some people working outside. So we have diversity of people living and working inside, some people living, working outside, some people working inside and living outside. And this diversity creates a lot of possibilities to actually live together in a more harmonious way and with a diverse risk. Okay, so I really wanted to come to this place where all these are the pillars of a community as we see it. And then once we have one community that works like that, maybe a second one, a third one, the impact contributors are here, they invest money, it's solid, they have a reserve fund, so they function in a way that we know they're resilient, sustainable, legally it's strong, no speculation, everything is locked. We can go to the next stage that we did 2 years ago. We created cooperative of cooperatives, meaning that now we have 30 different projects that are connected together and they're interlocked in a way by saying we are putting together part of our reserve fund in this cooperative that is also in a shared governance, and we start to define where we're going to put the money, maybe we're going to finance a new project, maybe we're going to finance this one that needs to extend in some ways or more investment. Maybe there is a contributor leaving this project, so they need actually some extra cash. We can give cash here for a while. We don't all need the money at the same time, so we start to target the money in a way that is much more fluctuating and also available in different moments and reimbursed in different moments. With an incentive, and I won't go into details, but basically it's around if you leave some money for a certain amount of time, then you can access a loan if you need later on from double the time and double the amount of the time that you left the money here. So it's a whole system where we start to have a parallel financing system that doesn't depend on the regular banking system. And all those projects, they can recognize each other because they are interlocked and they have the same basic bylaws. Well, okay, that was it. I think so. Yes. I'm sorry, that was very fast, no?
Any questions?
Can I ask two?
Yes. Okay.
So for this co-op of co-ops, is it decentralized? And if not, in what jurisdiction is it? And how do you deal with that?
So at the moment it's in France because I think we have 2 projects that are European, outside of France, but all the rest, the 28 others, they are in France, and the cooperative was created in France.
28.
Yeah, 30 in total. Yeah. And if they have for, in terms of money, it represents now 2 million, 2.5 million, and it's actually growing. So we are super proud of this. Yeah. And in terms of governance, you were asking, so it's one project, one voice.
Okay.
And the board is made of the project. There is no like head or nothing like that.
My other question is about, you were saying that you want this to be like a marriage. I'm wondering what exactly, like, you're married to the people, that was clear. Are you married to the location? Like, what if I want to leave for a month? Can I bring someone in? Are you also sort of like marrying? Like, to what extent does the marriage go?
So you have for the money because you have this first. Like, if you want to leave to another project or just leave, like, oh, this community is not for me, I want to leave. You have a contract. How you brought the money on your shared current accounts. Then you have a contract that says if you leave, you have this amount within a month, and then within 6 months, 25% of the amount, and then usually we say it's around 70,000 per year. If someone brings like 1 million euro, okay, we're not gonna, like, 70,000 is a bit low, but we adjust it, depend on the amount. But there is a contract that is very clear, so you just follow your contract. And about bringing someone in, then it depends on each project. Some project will say we want to have a consent, the person needs to do the integration process fully. Some projects say no, we don't want to actually have a say about that. People live with whoever they want. This is more in the internal regulation integration process. It's not really something about legal. But something important is that every person has a contract. We don't treat couples as one unit. Super important. And usually the next question is, and if I die, where goes my money? Is it your question?
Yes.
Okay, so your contract also defines that if you die or something, the money goes to you in heirs, to your heirs, and they will also be able to claim the money according to the contract. So the heirs wouldn't have a right to actually do something with your house because you don't own your house. So the project is protected.
Any other questions? One more?
Only dark ones. You want a dark question?
Yes, I love those.
What are some examples of processes for excluding or banishing someone from the project?
Yeah. Arbitration. Let's also go to that. So it's depending on each project, I would say, it's the same. Like you have certain rules, internal rules. If people don't respect it, I guess this is the first thing you can land on. Like we have an internal regulation and you're not respecting it. Another interesting way is actually in this one. So the contract is this one. Is based on some principles that are written, and we advise the groups to put it, about cooperation. And then you can define what means cooperation for this group. And then if you can actually prove that there is no cooperation in a certain way, the first thing that you can do is that this person doesn't cooperate. So the right of use for an advantage price of the home, of the house, of the private space doesn't apply anymore, so we're going to raise the rent to the market. So that's the first place where you can say, hey, it's not working. So now you are like a visitor and you're going to pay this amount if we can prove that you are not cooperating. So this is the first leverage that we can have in this one.
Is it arbitration process that would
So arbitration, yeah, I didn't update those slides because it's quite new.
Yeah.
What's happening is that we are creating an arbitration process here, made of it's a committee made of different people, including 2 or 3 that are actually getting a training to have official right to do the process of arbitration. And we're going to ask all the projects to add a line to their bylaws where they're going to say, in case of blah, 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 we go to arbitration that is represented here. And then this group will say, guys, you did, so we have different stage. First is to listen to the people, then mediation, then conflict resolution process. And if it doesn't work, then we will go to arbitration and we say, you have your legal documents, and we say, this is how it's going to happen. And this is a way to avoid to go to the
how did you choose your Supreme Court arbitrators? And what do? You decide that one is bad?
I would say that it's a project still, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I cannot say how we will, but we believe that it's more likely that we will find here a good, because all those people, they live in communities, they know what we are talking about. A judge doesn't know what we are talking about. So we believe there are more chances here that people would accept the deal and be less frustrated than if it actually goes to a court. That's our guess.
Final quick dark question. The slide said you give what you can. What does that mean exactly? So let's say that I could obviously afford to give 50,000 euros, but I'm actually only going to give 10,000 euros. Because why would I give more than I can take out straight away? Am I prevented from doing that? Is there some sort of means testing that says, look, obviously you can afford way more than that. You're just being selfish by not putting more in. You could really enable this project.
Yeah.
So we're not going to let you be selfish.
Yes.
You can only participate if you contribute actually what you can afford, which is much more than what they're offering.
Yeah, I can share my experience in my current project, and also what we hear about many projects. It's very interesting because I think it's a matter of phase. It's like taking a step. Usually people say, I have only 10,000 or 50,000, and they start like this because it's the beginning, they don't know, it's like a relationship, we start to feel each other, we don't know, and after a few years, usually it starts to increase. Because we grow the trust, people see the mechanisms, they see it's working, maybe they've witnessed people already leaving, no problem, they got their money back, and at some point we are all people a bit worried about the future. And we know that the banking system first is not serving our values, and also we don't really know if it's really stable. So I think that more and more people are actually invited with time to say, you know what, this is where I want to put my money and where I want to put my energy, and not continuing to finance war by keeping it in the bank. And if I trust that I can get it back, then yeah, I can slowly increase. And what I love about the steps, it's even about donations. Like in France, there are some projects that are already 15 years old, I would say. And some people, they start by putting the money into their current accounts here, and they go like, so I can get it back, blah, blah, blah. And then, now that they are aging, they're like, you know what, half of it I want to donate. Because this is my life, this is my project, my people. My community, and the rest will go to my heirs, and it's fine. And we see more and more people actually doing this move those last years. So for me, it's a sign that the system actually really works and is inviting people to take a step.
Great. I've got a question if we still got time.
We are running low on time, but I think we can get one more question, and then we have one more 5-minute talk.
I was just wondering if there is like a wider defined mission. I think you've spoken about some incredible, really sophisticated mechanisms that you've created for doing all of this. Is there like quite a coherent, overarching purpose of the whole network, or is it quite diverse, or is there not really a defined mission and purpose statement?
I love the question. So I think every project has their own purpose. Some will be super into permaculture, others will be more spiritual, and I don't know. And I don't think we have that kind of mission in common. I think the thing that really is like gluing this whole community is the idea of growing interdependence between people that are willing to share more risk together. Like really being more into like, okay, what happens to you happens to me, and we want to recreate the idea of like really what is a community where when something happens to you, I really want to attend to it and not like, oh, I'm gonna secure what is mine and good luck, you know. So I think the idea is not really, it's more political actually than, or philosophical than actually spiritual or based on some specific missions. Or I think the idea is that together we are stronger, and we believe that we can create this alternative system and make it stronger and stronger, and doing what we call systemic aikido. So we use the strengths of capitalism, but we kind of tweak the outcome, which is not like making some people richer, but actually supporting a whole network of people that live together. So I think that's the main thing. Like we want to tweak really in the system.
I completely love it. You're amazing.
Y'all, I'm so excited by these talks today. Like, we have this like Solarpunk version of the future. Monasteries are definitely the way to go. If anyone spends time in a monastery, I know Aska, you spent a bit of time in one. There's kind of like just like this way of life in je ne sais quoi. And I'm really inspired by Sandra and the late Pasages model, because a lot of the things that prevent us from buying land is like capital. And honestly, like having visited 30 communities, the most boring ones are like people who try to do it alone, or it's like some guy's land. Not always the case. I mean, you know. I know one piece of land that's really awesome that we haven't done. But you know, when you think of like, you know, 10, 20 years from now, and you know what that looks like, collective ownership. I did tell you this was going to be selfish lightning talk, and so now it kind of brings me to my final point of why you and some friends should buy land now. We were going to have a talk about 10 things that could happen with the apocalypse. You know, the US is on the verge of civil war sometime soon. World War III has already started. There's a lot of crazy things that could happen. I mean, AI is kind of, you know, just creating another further wealth gap. And I'm sure y'all have heard of the expected value theorem. Essentially how it goes is, even if the chance of civil war is like only 5%, like it's a low probability, or the chance of, you know, nuclear war, or you know, just mass wealth inequality, or whatever, even if those chances are really low, if you just look at what the cost would be if they happened, and you sum them all up, the cost of inaction, when there's like so many, even just like micro possibilities of crazy shit happening, the cost of inaction is actually really high. If you want the numbers, you know, I'll say that for another time. I'm sure you've heard of the Cantillon sequence. I'm a little embarrassed I'm saying it wrong. But the theory basically goes that like when there's like big booms in the economy that cause like mass wealth generations, they first kind of get like siphoned into certain, you know, asset classes and even certain types of wealthy people. And you know, generally, you know, you'll see a lot of stocks go up. I mean, even with like the recent dip, like it's still at an all-time high. You know, there's like private equity and venture. You know, certain prime real estate will then start to go up. You know, maybe certain luxury goods. You know, then housing, and you know, the last thing to go up is rural land, because unless it's like farmable land, and you know, there's like active like monocropping going on, you know, it's kind of the last thing to like increase in value. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the accessibility of land ownership, like if we're gonna start seeing like all this big wave of, you know, things going up, and there's like this rare moment that we can start to buy land now, when really like most of our ancestors, I mean, maybe some of y'all are different, but like if you really go back many generations, a lot of us were just like peasants living off land. It was like very few people that owned all the land. What's also interesting is like if you look at gold, and it's gonna sound like a little conspiracy-y, but someone like did this analysis where they looked at like how many cows could you buy with 1 ounce of gold, and from the Roman Empire, and everything in between, generally 1 ounce. And I wish I had a banana scale, but I found these fingers. Equated with 1 cow. And it's also kind of historically equated with 1 acre of land. Now, of course, anyone who does real estate, you're gonna be like, wait, the land that's, right outside New York City is gonna be different from, Montana, which is different from, wherever. But the price of gold has gone up 4 times in like the last period, like 10 years. And the price of rural land's kind of gone up, like depending on what geography you look at, like maybe 50% to 100%. And if you just look at the way things are like getting printed and all these things going on, maybe land is undervalued. Maybe now's a good time to do it. Wow, like so much work. Well, I would like to propose a 3-stage plan to do it. First step, find some buddies. Maybe not buddies, Sandra's kind of warned us, like, not your closest friend. But people that, you're like, hey, let's freaking do this project. You find your seed crew and you acquire the land. And as you acquire the land, you plant 100 trees, specifically fruit trees, because you want to have like a fruit forest and like permaculture out in the ditch. And you build a well and like a driveway, just the basic stuff. The basic stuff that like, if something crazy happened, you could at least like pitch a tent, eat figs, and like drink some water. And maybe 10 years goes by and you're like, oh, you know what, like world peace, we're all living in world peace, like, the second coming or third coming has happened and everything's fine. Maybe you can sell it if you're really like, sure, this community thing's not for me, like I went down the rabbit hole and I want to be a capitalist again, you and your 3 buddies can just sell it. But let's say you're like, all right, we got the land, we got the trees, let's move on to stage 2. That's when you find your Series A crew. You bring more money into the current account, as we learned from the late Passages model. You bring more people. So you started with 3, maybe now you bring an additional 5. And your goal here is like, well, let's actually like have some buildings where we can actually land in it sometime, and at the very least have like a fun place to go on vacation. At the very most, actually start planning for what's next. So here you build your solar system and your battery system. A lot of this is modeled off living energy farms. I think they have like the best in class off-grid situation. You build some land where you can park your RVs and pitch up tents. You at least have your community building, and maybe some additional houses. And really, worst case scenario, you got like a shared timeshare vacation property. Still gonna go up in value. Maybe the 7 of you decide another 10 years like, this was fun. But at the very least, you at least got some community getting started. And then first, stage 3 is your IPO crew, which does not stand for what you think it stands. It stands for intentional property occupancy. And this is where you go full bore. This is where you're like, hey, are we still bring Jeremy over? You build your. This is like you're ready to like ride out civilization. And of course, you bring in more money. It's still one share, one vote. You build your tennis court. If stage 2 was about like just being able to survive, it's like you got your fig trees. Maybe at least got enough infrastructure. You can get like a chicken coop going on. Stage 3 is about like riding out the apocalypse in style. You add your solar capacity. You have conversation pits. More gardens, more greenhouses, playgrounds. Which of course, I'm just gonna be some basic playground. If you're Solarpunkers, you're building freaking pirate ships. More community centers, more tiny homes, freaking sauna. All right, the boat. We're gonna get a boat, y'all.
So sketch up on a napkin and that to Jared's
You guys are on the same page.
I ran out of mid-journey credits. So
Was this ChatGPT 1.0?
But again, like the worst case scenario is you got some land project, but it all starts. It literally all just starts with buying a piece of land. Buying a piece of land. Some of y'all are New Yorkers. It's like $3,000 to $5,000 an acre in Vermont. That's Vermont, right? I don't know what's the price around here in Portugal. Anyway, come talk. We're assembling pods to buy land, and I hope this has been great.
Are you currently doing this?
Yes. There's a few different threads going on. If you haven't noticed by now, my goal is for every single freaking person I know to buy more land, especially queer people, especially marginalized people who historically not have access to it. So there is a community I'm part of in Vermont. We're actually looking to create satellite communities around the main community. Twin Oaks, I think, is a great example of this. They started as a commune, and then just people started like coming and doing satellite things, and also in Canada. But maybe in Europe, if anyone's like got some ideas, I'm all ears. You can find some coin. And speaking of Europe,
Speaking of buying land,
You'd like to buy this?
someone has bought some land and is going to tell us about it.
so instead of buying land with friends, how about whether you could buy a piece of land next to family or friends? Would you do that?
Yes.
Yes, I did too.
What was the solution?
I didn't understand.
So I said, like, instead of buying land with friends, how about buying land next to friends or family? Which is what I did in 2022 in rural France. The land next to where my parents-in-law lived, which is this piece. This piece of land next to them became for sale, and I was living in the city in the Netherlands during the pandemic, and everything was super small, and then we had the opportunity to buy this, and so we did. Is there a keyboard somewhere? Or?
At the top of
If it's your computer,
Top of the
you'll
projector.
Oh, but it's on your laptop.
Oh yeah, but it's moving.
And so, how do you go about it to buying land? What do you like pay attention to? So one thing that we did before buying the land was to do a bit of a survey, so you can download these apps and then see how the sun moves in different seasons. And so when I was there, it was in December, but then when it's summer, the sun is much higher. And so it's a good way to sort of get a feel about what the land does over time and throughout the seasons. So that's one tip that I can give if you want to buy land. The second one is to get a drone or borrow a drone from friends. And then ideally you would go in spring equinox, the summer solstice, the autumn equinox, and the winter. And then make pictures throughout the day and see how the shadows move. So this is, I think, somewhere in December, and then this is in the morning, the shadows are here. Then this is the afternoon, the shadows are a bit longer and like they move around a bit. And then in the evening, shadows are super long. And so that's another way to sort of know what your land is doing over the seasons, and how to adjust your plans to building properties, or building buildings or features on your land. Because it's rural France and it can get really, really hot in the summer for weeks on end. So you want to make use of the existing shade. Thank you. And so we're working with a permaculture designer to sort of figure out what we want to do with the land.
as well. So this is a corner where you want to have some garden beds. You want to have a food forest down here. The main house will come here. Driveway, also important. One of the key aspects of permaculture when you're designing this is like WAS, so water, access, and structures. So how does the water run from, it's on the slope, so the water comes from here to here. Here to here, so you want to try to catch the water at the highest areas of the land. So then we can work with gravity instead of against it. And another way to store water is in the soil. So one of the things I did was to dig out a trench, fill it up with like some of the pruning, the material biomass that I got off the trees. So the big logs and branches. Add some wood chips. Thank you. And then use cardboard or save of cardboard from purchases on Amazon or other websites. If you are buying a couch, you get big boxes of cardboard, so those are pretty useful. So you can use that as well. It will all decompose, and then you can make a pathway on top of that that will absorb the water and then slowly decompose as well over time. So it will feed the soil in this area for about 10 years. The current status is that we put a tiny house up there, made a nice terrace to enjoy the sunsets, and we were finalizing the final quotes for our financing and mortgage. This is a picture of the 3D model of the house that we are planning on building. So what else we are dreaming on this disaster struck because the house of my parents-in-law burned down a few months ago. So luckily nobody got hurt, but it was a big trauma. But the silver lining to that is that the future is that we're going to have 2 super highly efficient homes that are going to be built around the same time. And so even though the house was maybe 20 years old, so it was made from solid wood, it was decently insulated. It didn't comply to the new standards or even to our passive house, which is like you basically use no energy to heat or cool your home. I can dive into that more at a later talk in this month. And so we're rebuilding that whole site and building how it was with nice garden beds and a pool and everything. And so, next slide please. What are the future plans? Because this is all, family based and like not super community based. So one of the things that I would love to do in the future is to open it up for periods of the year for things like this, like a month-long residency or 2-week maybe permaculture training program. So that's one. And then another one is that, there's, you see it's just rural France, a lot of farmland. So I'd love to buy some of these fields because these fields are dead. They've been exhausted for decades. And even though they do crop rotation, so one year it's wheat, another year is sunflowers, and then another year is something else, I forgot. The soil is dead. So one of my goals is to learn how to regenerate this depleted farmland because it's a big issue. Like there's tons and tons and tons of depleted farmland basically worth nothing. And how can you learn to regenerate that kind of land? So that's a bit about my project. Hopefully I can host the first residency in 2027. Thank you so much.
True Solarpunk.
It sounds a lot easier than this whole collective ownership.
You have to keep the crunch.
Amazing. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, team. Thank you. We'll have a